The Vulpine Autocracy. That's what the humans called them anyway. What they called themselves a few humans could pronounce and fewer still cared to. The autocracy wasn't very popular with their neighbours, what with their tendency to categorise all other races as either threats or targets, predators or prey. Suffice to say, the Vulpine didn't think much of the United Nations of Orion and their so-called government. A country run by a council instead of an autocrat? An alpha who is chosen by popularity rather than by strength? These were clearly prey. Maybe they were worthy of being slaves, but the tendency to prefer barking and yelping as a way to solve disputes rather disgusted most hunters. These were the thoughts of Bloodseeker of Orvir, packmaster of the Silverclaw Mercenary Company. He watched from his chair on the command deck as his raiders finished mopping up the local patrol craft. This would be another easy victory, just like the last 3 assaults. For the past several years, independent slaver and pirate guilds have been striking the most far-flung human settlements. Officially, Orion space only included those star systems within 50 light-years of Sol, although plenty of humans have settled beyond that limit in various private and corporate outposts. His Excellency, the High Alpha, have been very careful to keep raids unofficial and limited to territory outside of the 50 light-year limit. Even prey, when run properly, can overwhelm the hunters. Far better to test the human defences and the resolve of their leadership. But now, Bloodseeker was here, at this remote border outpost at the very limits of human space. The space station wasn't large, it was little more than a pit stop, but it was officially the property of the Orion government. Still, there's no reason this raid shouldn't go just like the others, thought Bloodseeker. All ships execute boarding manoeuvres, hunters to the airlock. A chorus of yips and howls echo through the ship, along with the drumming of claw fists on the bulkhead. Bloodseeker donned his own combat suit. The thin material was deceptively tough, designed to resist the heavy lasers and plasma rifles of line troops against mere police weapons. It had, thus far, provided complete immunity, and the rest of his hunters wore similar suits. All of them bore beam guns capable of cutting through all the human combat armor they'd faced so far. The only thing they'd had to worry about was the ceramic titanium barricades the humans seemed to employ. Assemble, hunters! Today we shall have ourselves another hunt. Kill any who resist. Those who surrender may prove useless slaves, and if not, we can always increase our food stores. Yipping laughter echoed through the cargo bay. We've all done this before, so let's do the same as always. And Greenlegs, maybe you can earn yourself a better name today. More jeers as one of the older Vulpine ruffled the youngest hunter's fur. Follow me. I'll buy a bottle of blood wine for the hunter who strikes first blood. Captain, the damn foxes took out the last of our fighters. Well, that's it then. We're out of time. Captain Maury pinched her nose and looked at her antique pocket watch. She sent those men on a suicide mission to just buy time. It was something they needed, desperately. Corporal Bishop, did you finish the preparations I requested? Yes, ma'am. Civilians have all been evacuated to the central citadel. We've sealed and vented all the routes along the causeway, and deployed the barricades at bulkheads A3 and A6 respectively. Are you sure you don't want us to set up the main barricade closer to the docking base? I'm sure, Bishop. You remember to leave the bay doors open and unlocked? Yes, ma'am. But I still don't understand. Captain, incoming hail on Unknown frequency. Is there a noun? On speaker. This is the OSV Renown to Portsmouth Orbital. We've received your distress signal. What is your situation? Maury touched the headset on her cheek as a small grin crept into her features. This is Portsmouth Actual. Bright? Johnny Bright, that you? A new voice responded. Renown, Actual here. Good gods, Micah. Just what have you gotten yourself into this time? Just some trouble with foxes going after the hen house, and me without any bloodhounds. We've got 5 enemy frigates sending boarding teams. Meanwhile, I have next to 600 civvies holed up in the station centre. I've only got about a company of security personnel, plus a few dozen volunteers with military or police training. Okay, Micah, sit tight. I'm recalling our fighters and escorts now. We can get to Portsmouth in 4 hours. Can you hold that long? Assuming they don't have rocket launchers, we can hold them for longer than that. But hurry anyway, or they might smash this nice bottle of Atlantean plum wine before I can offer you any. Portsmouth out. The mood in the command centre had risen noticeably. Alright people, cavalry are coming, but we still have a job to do. Let's get to it. And as if on cue, emergency lights began to spin as a klaxon blared. Enemy landing craft in base 1 and 2. Security to the barricades. Bloodseeker and his men stormed out to their dropships into the hangar. Not only had the fools left the bay doors open, they also failed to set up proper defences in the hangar. The few that met him in the hangar fled once the second ship touched down. How such a foolish species had managed to survive long enough to leave their home was a mystery. He would enjoy making blood wine from their young when this was all over. Young primates did make the best blood wine after all. That was just proper. Always use what you kill. To do otherwise was wasteful. Bone splitter here. We swept the other hangar. We've encountered resistance, but the monkeys fled after you wounded a couple of them. I guess they're busy hiding further in. Bloodseeker grunted an acknowledgement. This is going even better than their raids on the outer settlements. Still, didn't hurt to stick to the plan. Alright, there should be a standard sweeping up, but let's do this properly. Advance by squads, watch your corners, and check for ambushes. The hunters did as instructed, moving in ordered, disciplined groups, covering one another as they advanced deeper into the station. It wasn't long before they came to the main access corridor. Portsmouth was a long, O'Neill-type station. Main Street, a wide causeway running through the station spine, connected the numerous docking bays and cargo facilities to the centre of the Habdrum. Most of the station interior was far from complete, but since it was carved into the centre of an asteroid, the only way in and out was along the causeway. It was a bit of a hike without access to the station trams, but it was becoming increasingly clear that the creatures would hold up towards the station centre. Nearly 10 minutes of careful advance, and they hadn't seen a single human since the small scuffle at the docking bays. Bloodseeker wasn't sure if he should be annoyed or nervous. Still, his troops advanced down the dark corridor before coming upon another tram station. This time, the bulkhead was sealed. The forward squad was just deciding if they should exit the tram line or try cutting the door when it happened. Light flooded the station, and laser fire began pouring into his hunters from both flanks. His men dove for any cover they could find, the platform, benches, pillars, and quickly moved to return fire. It didn't take long to find who had superior training and weapons. Even with the advantage of prepared positions and a perfect ambush, less than half of the human shots hit home, and most of those that hit were diffused harmlessly of the Vulpine combat uniforms. Emboldened, many hunters began to stand from cover, yipping laughter leaving their canned jaws as automatic lasfire cut into the monkeys' positions. It didn't take long for them to break and run. Predatory grins graced the lips of the hunters and jaws began salivating. It seemed this prey wouldn't be without some sport after all. All hunters, advance by hunting party. Pack leaders call up the rest of the reserves. It seems there's no reason for them to miss out on the fun. Having drawn first blood, the Silverclaws eagerly mounted the platforms to the side of the rails and followed their prey out the starboard side doors. Exiting onto the edge of the residential section, here the causeway was a raised highway. All above, below and around them were fields of green and grey and silver. Some of the planned city was complete ahead, towards the centre of the highway, while further out, streets defined the various lots where there would one day be offices or homes or shops. This station would have been a wonder one day. It's almost a pity they'll never finish it. Packmaster! The enemy gathers ahead! Bloodseeker turned his attention from the scenery to the group of silver-clad humans ahead of him. These seemed different. Instead of the coveralls worn by the various humans they'd encountered so far, these wore silvery grey armour and black undersuits. On their left shoulders they wore an emblem, a constellation with laurels around it. Police, soldiers. We should be careful with those. We don't know what... Look, spears! This cry was met with dumbfounded stares, followed quickly by more laughter from the hunters. A mere 100 paces away, these humans stood in perfect formation with what seemed to be spears and great shields, like soldiers from the Bronze Age. The hunters began walking forward, firing into the enemy, all semblance of discipline evaporating in the face of such a laughable display. They were so desperate as to resort to using spears and shields. But something tickled the back of Bloodseeker's mind. Something felt off about this. Those shields were proving surprisingly resilient, and their armour certainly seemed to be capable too. As he was absorbed in thought, his men continued their casual advance. Then a high-pitched, authoritative voice rang out like a bell. He didn't recognise the tongue. Junbi! The front line of shielded spearmen knelt, revealing the second rank's heads. Hyoteki! Two lines of spears lowered towards the Vulpine ranks. It was then he realised. His men were in the open. Hunters! Scatter! Hey! The next thing he knew, the world was white and ringing. Maury watched from atop her command car as the damn foxes practically waltzed up to her officers. Arrogant pricks. She'd given explicit instructions. Don't fire until I say. 60 metres, 40 metres, 20. At 15 metres away, she gave the order to fire. Thump, 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 thump. Flashbang grenades scattered in front of the Vulpine, blinding and deafening them as a rapid chorus of bangs resounded through the station. Riot shotguns unloaded onto the mob of hunters. 3 dozen Vulpine died to a hail of shotgun slugs. She was a security officer, a space cop, and Coast Guard commander. Her men weren't trained to fight an invading army, they weren't equipped for it. But right now, they were the perfect group for the job. Over the last couple of years, Orion Naval Intelligence had learned a few things about the Vulpine. First, they tended to think of other species in binary. Either you were a threat or you were prey. This insight into their psychology had been central to her plan to bait them in. Oni had also learned that most of the other races had forgone both firearms and ballistic armor. It made sense to a degree. Inside the tight confines of a ship, having bullets flying around was a hazard to everyone, and energy weapons didn't require bulky ammo storage or logistics. Any generator with sufficient time could recharge a power pack. Meanwhile, there was no point in carrying bulky ballistic armor when everyone was using beam guns, so most races favoured lightweight armor with insulative and energy refractive properties. Of course, this was strictly in boarding actions. Ground combat often involved hand grenades and mortars and missiles, so ballistic armor there was more useful, but with shipborne and station security, it was as much a hazard to your health as your enemy. And this is why her security force, armed with low penetration SMGs, shotguns and anti-beam riot shields, were perfect for this. As for the bayonets, her security forces were using the same pattern shotguns as the Orion Army and the Fleet Lancers, so all they needed was to 3D print bayonets. A call over her headset interrupted her thoughts. Captain, the enemy is falling back to the tram station. They're running. Should we pursue? Negative. All forces, I repeat, all forces begin an ordered withdrawal to A6. We bought ourselves some time while they licked their wounds, but if I were them, I'd come back with some heavier weapons. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't trust those shields to stand up to a heavy laser or plasma repeater for long. Roger. With that, her forces boarded their transports and withdrew towards the first barricade. Captain Maury, have a moment? It was one of the civilian volunteers. An engineer with Day One Heavy Industries. What was his name? Yoon something? Yoon Jun-hong, Captain. Ah, sorry. Didn't realize I said that out loud. Go ahead, Mr. Yoon. That surprise you requested is ready. I've just finished fabrication in the Citadel's engineering bay. They should be deployed and ready in an hour or so. Thank gods. Still, are you sure this is okay? Day One can be a bit touchy on the subject of fabrication rights. Bypassing their FRM software with a managerial override has to be a breach of contract. Given the circumstances, I'm sure my employer will overlook this breach of copyright, so long as we arrange payment later. Especially given my expertise is worth more to them than a couple of autocannons. Thanks, Mr. Yoon. I'm on my way to the first barricade. Load up what you need on one of the trucks, and my men will see you safely there. We just have to hold out a few hours.